Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Do you live in the Pittsburgh area? Do you have a son or daughter that's neurodivergent and in need of a job? Well, my next guest, I have a company called Spectrum Fudge where they hire those who are on the spectrum. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and let's learn more about them. See you there.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with Roger and Erin Haney. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So why don't we start off with, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourselves and how you got into hiring those who are autistic for your fudge company?
Well, I guess it goes back really 15 years ago when Erin and I had our second child, who his name is Jacob, and Jake is at the age of 5 was diagnosed as autistic. So from that moment on, we thought a lot about what his future is going to be like, and I know Erin, as a mom, will share some of her feelings and challenges she had along the way. But from a dad's perspective, from my perspective, it was all about, you know how guys are. We just want to fix the problem, right? So how
Yeah.
do we fix not that autism is a problem, but how do we fix the challenges that he might have in his life? So for me, it was about school, and then it was also about the workplace. So I guess that was the first roadblock, I guess, that we had. We at the time we were living in Florida, and while his teachers and his aides and all the therapists he had were wonderful people, they were pretty transparent with us that Florida was about 20 years behind many of the northern states. So they said, if you really, when it comes to services, correct. If you really want the best for Jake, you may want to look at moving, particularly up north. So Erin, and many other things, she is wonderful in researching. So she did a lot of work and found Pennsylvania as a state that was had very good um, services that were available. And as a Pennsylvanian myself, growing up in Western PA, it was kind of nice to be able to come home. So fast forward 8 years, I guess, Jake, when we returned to Pennsylvania, kind of like checked that off the box. He's at a good school with great resources. But in my profession and healthcare, I had a lot of departments that reported to me. For example, two to come to mind are food service and environmental services, where I would encourage our leaders to try to employ individuals right out of high school, or while they're even still in high school, even volunteering, just getting experience for some of those with special needs. And not just there, IT services, transporters, many of our other departments. But corporate America can be very challenging, and it's very cutthroat at times, and productivity is very demanding. So even despite everybody's good intentions and best effort, I still didn't think we were making the inroads that we needed, not only for Jake, but for others. So then, lo and behold, 2020 came around and everybody reflected, right? That meant something different to everybody. But for us, I found myself at home a lot and talking with Erin, and we're discussing what's the next steps. So then from there, to make a very long story short, I decided to find some employment opportunity for him, something that I thought he would be interested in doing. Some of the ideas were an ice cream shop or a coffee shop or perhaps a car wash.
You even thought a UPS store.
Yeah, we thought about buying a UPS store and having kind of a brick and mortar, process with that. And lo and behold, it ended up being, I kind of infused myself in the environment of Western PA, got to meet many individuals that were in the special needs circuit, and met an individual who was looking to sell his company, and it just happened to be a fudge company. I'm often asked why fudge, and I guess the answer was just luck. Really, a coincidence.
And they weren't involved in special
They
needs.
weren't.
This was literally a mom and pop fudge company that they wanted to retire, and they thought, anybody want to buy our assets and our recipes? And it made sense.
It did. And then from my perspective, I was watching them do the job. And I first thing I thought of was, boy, I think Jake could do this. A lot of the steps were very repetitive. And while that does not describe
Everyone.
everyone under the spectrum. It definitely described my son and a lot of others that I've met through the years, as Jake's father. So cashed in the retirement, quit the job, bought the company, and it's been 3.5 years now. And Jake's 15, and he helps out a little bit on the weekends and in the evening. But we're partnering with a number of schools, giving them volunteer experiences. And then as they graduate, we're hiring and employing as many individuals as we can.
Now, Erin, what is it like raising somebody who's autistic? What are some of the challenges you have to deal with, and what are some of the positives that you get out of watching Jake grow?
Yeah, I love that question. The biggest challenge is realizing that whatever expectations I had when I became pregnant with Jake needed to change because it wasn't about me and what I wanted or what I thought he was going to turn into or be.
Yeah.
It was
Mhm.
but me as a mom need to support the human that he is and help him be the best Jake Haney he can be.
Mhm.
So that was the biggest challenge is I had to check my ego. I had to check my need to compete with others, my I had to check the FOMO, if you will, fear of missing out, social media comparisons that seemed to come with when they called it mom booking instead of Facebooking, things like that, where I had to realize that it wasn't about matching other people. What do they say? They say comparison is the root of evil, or is and it truly is, because comparing my son's growth and development to others, quite frankly, left me with a lot of disappointment and self um, negative self-talk. So I think for me, that was the biggest challenge, was just getting over myself and realizing we had a teacher that once told us it is no longer about you two, it's all about him. And it's true. And so I think with that, the biggest advantage is he's so cool.
Mhm.
And we've realized how cool of a kid he is, young man. And I think, every time it's funny because I think people as parent, me as a parent, I panic every time summer comes around and I think, oh my gosh, he's not going to be in school. He's not going to have his structure. So I think that's going to be another obstacle we have to face. I'm coming to the realization because we spend much more time with him in the summer than we do during the school year,
Yeah.
just because of life. And we were on a 2-week vacation with him recently. And I thought, this is really cool because I'm realizing, Erin, start talking to him like a 15-year-old boy, like you would talk to any 15-year-old boy. Because you know what? It's in there and he understands.
Mhm.
So it's little things that I think we've both have realized, like, he's no longer 7-year-old Jake. He is now 15-year-old Jake. And guess what? He has a lot to give that the label does not restrict him of. And we need to move past that and realize he's so much more.
I mean, that seems to be the issue is when people look at us, they look way past our qualities of what we can give and what we can
100%.
get. And it's just like, why are you looking past my qualities of what I can give you and what I can offer you as my services? We have so many special traits. Our uniqueness, the fact that we have our special interests, and sometimes our special interest collides with our work, and we become better for it.
Mhm.
That is so well said. And I think, and I'm sure, your parents, your caretaker, your family member early on when you were diagnosed too. I know it was different, but I will have to say, like, I think what's been so fascinating is, early on in the process, all of the therapists, doctors, intel we talked to were constantly preparing us for what Jake would never
Mhm.
be able to do, or what he can't do,
Oh,
what he won't do. And I think this entire community has been fighting their entire lives to say, hey, guess what?
yeah.
There's a whole lot of things we can do. Let's
Yeah.
focus on that.
That reminds me of a story I had early on in my life. I went to DORD, Department of Rehab, back in the day, and I had this caseworker. I'm sitting there with my mother, and she literally goes to me, "You cannot go to a 4-year college. You cannot achieve it. You can only achieve a 2-year." And I'm just sitting there, I'm thinking, and I know my mom knows I'm steaming at that point. And I look at her, and my mom's like, just keep it calm. Don't say anything you'll regret. Because she knows I get a little hot-headed when someone tells me I can't do something that I want to do.
Yeah.
So we leave, and I turn to my mother, and my mom's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to tell her supervisor that I've never been insulted in my life. She's like, you got to remember, you got to be very tactful. You don't want to insult people. So I got home, I emailed her supervisor and I said, listen, your caseworker is only looking at paper. She's not looking at the person. She's telling me what I cannot do when she doesn't know what I can do. And the
Yeah.
next thing I know, I get a new caseworker.
Good. Good for you. Good
I
for
mean,
you.
when did you realize Jake had autism?
It's a funny story. I think I started questioning signs about 13 months old.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I started noticing things, but between 13 and 15 months old. I would say it was really in July of 2011. No, July of 2012. Sorry. Right? Yeah. No, July 2011. That's right. And because he was born in April of 10. So it was July of 2011. And I remember thinking, um, he's not looking at me when we call his name. The only time he looks at me is if I have a camera in his face and I'm singing music.
Or you have a cookie.
Or I have a cookie. If I have a cookie and said, Jake, do you want a cookie? That's exactly right. We were just looking at home videos last weekend too. And yeah, he was mesmerized when I had something else in my hand covering my eyes so he didn't have to make eye contact.
Yeah.
Um, but if I sang, like I would sing that song, John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, because
Yeah.
his name's in it, and he would look and connect. So it's probably about 15 months. I would say, hey, Roger, do you think, have you seen, am I crazy? Am I overreacting? And he's like, I don't know. I think you're fine. I think he's good. And we'd use the similar, he's a boy, he's the second child. Our
Hmm.
first child's a girl, and our kids are 13 and a half months apart, Reed. So we were also thinking, well, maybe we're just comparing too quickly,
Yeah.
or maybe our time hasn't been designated to him as much as we wanted. And then probably about 20 months old, I went to an event for a family member and out of town, and Roger was with the kids over the weekend, and he called me and he's like, yeah, you're right. And I now see it. I see it. Let's get him in. And kudos to our healthcare provider in Florida. Our pediatrician was pretty great. He got us in the next day.
Yep.
And he did a little thing. Jake was 20 months old at the time, and he did a little thing. It was December. And he was like, he put our bag of Cheerios up on the shelf and said, all right, and put Jake and said, Jake, do you want those Cheerios? And Jake started grabbing them himself. Instead of doing the typical baby cues where they would point or look at you and point, Jake didn't want to engage us. He thought, I can get it myself.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I look back now and be like, he showed great independence rather than, oh, look, he's not engaging us in communication. So, and they were, that was 2 days before Christmas. And they quickly did an eval on him and we got him into early steps. But yeah, we noticed it really early. And before his second birthday, he was already enrolled in speech in the state of, and OT. So we were doing speech and occupational therapy in private services.
Mhm.
And in the state of Florida, they don't want to diagnose till 5, typically,
Wow.
at least back then, because they didn't want it to be official on his record until we knew for sure.
Wow.
Our developmental pediatrician he was 25 months old in May, because we had to go on like a 6-month waiting list because resources were so tight. And he told us, I think it's a receptive communication delay and an expressive communication delay. So not fully him understanding what's coming in and not sure how to spit it back out. So that was what he said in order to get services. And we threw him in everything. We put him in equine hippo horse therapy. We put him in occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy. And he could only get 1 session a week with the school system. So we had to pay private. Right. So we had to throw it all in.
Yeah.
And then by 5, they said, okay, now they'll be entering kindergarten next year. This is where we say he's autistic.
I mean, that's the problem with the states today is and I've said this with so many guests and so many people, is the US is so far behind when it comes to autism and dealing with it and the services. We are years behind everybody else in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
who we should follow really is Australia. They are so ahead of the curve in taking care of their people who are autistic. And it just shows that we are a society who doesn't care about our people.
Yeah. Sadly, you're right.
You're not wrong. Yeah.
Now, has Jake found his special interest?
He has, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, I think he's
Yeah.
getting there. He continues to evolve. Art.
Yeah, he loves to
He's an
draw,
artist.
loves the color. He'll go, our house many times looks kind of like a museum with pictures on the wall because he'll just grab a scotch tape and hang it up wherever he
Yeah.
feels like it. So,
And one of the things we've done is with our company, we've actually had, I have to smuggle his art out of here. Like he doesn't, so he'll never know because he puts up and then he's like, where'd they go? But I take them down and I cut them out and we send them to our purchasers. So the people that purchase our candy, we put it in the box and ship it. So they get a little note and a thank you from Jake. So that's,
Um, that's
yeah.
so nice. That is a
Mhm.
nice touch. It shows that you're a family-run company, that you care about your
yeah.
customers
Yeah.
and
That's
your
right.
purchasers.
That's right.
Now, Roger, have you had like any father-son moments with Jake that you just that like kind of melt your heart and make you go, "Oh God, I am so glad he's my son."
I would say that it's been recent in the last couple of years since I've stopped traveling so much for my corporate job.
Yeah.
There was no question that Jake was Erin's number one, and she followed him everywhere. Um, but I would say that my best interactions with Jake is when his other big interest besides art is swimming. So when him and I go swimming, it's the connections that we have together in a pool and we're kind of just playing around and swimming is probably the most that I can get into his space, his brain,
Mhm.
and we're right there with each other. So I would say those are the moments that I really cherish.
Well, what about the time at the factory? You were sitting there and he took labels off of apples without you even needing to tell him, and he was sitting there
Yep.
working with you, and you were able to.
So, like a lot of times when we're at the factory, it's especially in the earlier days, it
Mhm.
was all hands on deck, and we're trying to finish these orders. And Jake was still, 12, 13 years old, and it was
Mhm.
easier to just get the work done and let him color while we're working, so we didn't slow down to get it finished.
Mhm.
Right or wrong, we're trying to meet the deadlines. Now, I think he has been there so much observing to
Mhm.
Aaron's point, he was able to kind of, just turn around and all of a sudden he was working on the task that I was just
Mhm.
working on and just jumped right in there. So that was definitely a proud work moment for sure.
And let me also just say, and I know you have questions, but Roger, prior to him making the decision to quit his corporate job and create this
Mhm.
business, he was traveling 4 nights a week, three
Yeah.
weeks out of the month. So the fact that he said I was Jake's person was strictly because, I mean, yes, he and I have a bond, but it was also because dad wasn't home all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And, when he was home, our daughter, who is a year older than Jake, and Roger have an incredible bond. So she would demand all of his attention. So Jake didn't really get a chance to bond with dad. And I would say in these last 4 years, it's been phenomenal to the point when I used to go out to travel and Roger would be home and I had to travel for work, Jake couldn't fall asleep at night because I wasn't there. Well,
Oh.
now I don't need to be here. The bond between the two of them is incredible, to even the fact where Jake will go in and lay with Roger and just be like, hi, dad. I missed you, dad. And things like that, that I think those are your melting
Oh
moments
yeah.
that he probably thought that he would never have because of what we were told.
No, does he have friends now?
His cousins.
His cousins are very close, and there's a few in school,
Yeah.
a few kids in school, and they come over sometimes. And when they get a chance to get together,
Mhm.
and whether it's some direct play, it's still a lot of parallel play.
Yeah.
Um, but
But he knows they're there.
he knows they're there, and his cousins are so great with him and his sister that they pull him in to their world. And make him play.
Mhm.
And he sleeps really well those nights because
Yeah,
he's worn out from them.
I would say they're all neurotypical. His
Mhm.
cousins are neurotypical. And the kids that come over from his class, there's two girls specifically and another young boy, and they're all in the same autistic support class. So it's to the fact where
Yeah.
he'll have peers from his class, but then he has his neurotypical peer models, which has been outstanding for him in that modeling situation.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of get that too, I have my friends who are neurotypical and I have friends that are also neurodivergent, and it's I get both worlds, and I need
Yeah.
that because
Yes.
because I remember my mother saying you need to go out and talk with people, you need to socialize. And I would always be, and sure you see with this with Jake in the early on is he used to always want to probably like be by himself because he doesn't enjoy the communications, where I never did either. And until I started my podcast, I never realized what it was to like talk with people and mix and get to know people.
Reed, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Oh, that's awesome.
Now, what have you guys learned from hiring those who are neurodivergent in your fudge gum store?
So I think that everyone's different. And it takes us a little bit of time to figure out the strengths
Mm-hmm.
of each individual that's there. So, and we start to know that, okay, Tommy's coming in today and he loves the label of the products. And Charles is coming in this afternoon and he loves the way the products on the scale. So we start to assign roles for individuals. And then right when they get comfortable with it, and then we switch it on them because we want them to grow.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah,
want them to develop and we want them to feel comfortable, build confidence, enjoy coming, and but then get outside their comfort
Yeah.
zone a little bit too and kind of stretch.
Because in typical
Yeah.
business
World,
of
yeah.
America, every day is not the same.
And you
no,
don't always have, not every part of your job you love,
You don't
right?
always get to do
There's
jobs
always
you
other
like.
parts too. So we try to stress for that. And our goal too is we want them to gain those skills and confidence, and then ultimately we want them to move on to another organization and go out and do what their life's work is. You know, Spectrum Fudge is kind of meant to be that growing, that confidence building
Yeah.
company, and that many of these individuals, whether they're 18, 19, 22, we have a gentleman that's 49, many of them it's their first job. Some had short
mhm,
jobs in between, but for various reasons it didn't work for them.
yeah.
So that's a lot of what we try to accomplish.
Now let's go back to what is your hiring process like? Because I know from talking with other people, their process of hiring autistics is different than hiring those who are not neurotypical. So what is your process for hiring the neurodivergent and the autistic?
I love to have the individuals come into the factory.
Mm,
And I want them to, we'll talk for a little while, kind of keeping it casual and comfortable. I don't treat it like,
No resume.
yeah, like I like to see them have resumes, but I understand that unless their school program educated them on how that's possible, that they won't have that. But I don't look at things necessarily about a firm handshake and looking in the eyes like I would for perhaps a neurotypical interview that I would be having. But the other part of it is I want to, as soon as possible, I want to get them with an apron on, a hairnet on, have them wash their hands, and get them to shadow with another individual on our team.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see them if they, and I'll usually know within the first 10 minutes whether they like it or they don't like it. And to me, that's a huge part of the interview process
mhm.
because I want them to feel what the work is. I don't want to get them bogged down with trying to answer a hypothetical question that I asked them, like, tell me about a time in which you did blah, blah, blah. You know, that maybe is more for a neurotypical interview or for a supervisor role or something like that. But for many of these individuals, they're already extremely nervous. It's about getting them in a comfortable position so that they feel like they can show me who they are.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that is the most important thing when you're interviewing someone who's a neurodivergent is you gotta make them feel comfortable because I feel that the corporate world doesn't understand that when you come into an interview, twice as nervous as the next person.
Right.
You throw a neurotypical person in there, and they're somewhat nervous, but you throw someone like me who's autistic or you're like Jacob, we're twice as nervous. We got so much going on for our heads. You need to bring that calming presence into us so we can feel free to talk, feel free to express what we want to do, what we would like to do, and kind of have trust in you.
Yeah. And And I feel like that's, I've always said it, whether I was in the corporate world or I say it in my current role, employees don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that
Yeah.
could go from a vice president that I'm hiring to it's on the other side, special needs individual that's coming in for their first interview.
Now, can you walk me through what a typical day at your fudge shop would be? What roles do the autistics take on typically?
Yeah, absolutely. So when they first come into the factory, day one is apologize, our computer's dying.
Not a
um,
problem.
so our first thing they do is they get some experience coming in and getting that apron on, getting that hairnet on, following somebody, getting a tour of the factory, and just really observing and just watching. And then they start to package the products. So like many of ours, let's say for example, 3 chocolate covered Oreos go into a sleeve, a package. So they visually observe somebody putting them in, and then from there they learn how to seal the bag shut, and then they know where to put it. And for many times, it's completing an order, like for a wholesale account. So they would need the nutritional label on the back, the Best Buy sticker, and they would need our logo, which goes on the front. So there would be like kind of an assembly line created where each individual would have their own step in the process. And then from there, once they master that technique, then the next thing is they learn to use a scale. They learn to weigh a product. They learn how to tear a scale. Let's say it's gummy bears. They put the plastic container on. They tear the scale so that it's back to zero. And then
Yeah,
they
that's
learn
right.
measurements and weights. And then from there, they advance into the chocolate room where they start to dip products. They'll dip chocolate covered pretzels into the chocolate machine, the Oreos, and they'll learn to make peanut butter meltaways. And then from there, then they assist with the fudge making process. This is very special here because it's very high temperature. We emphasize with safety first. So we want to make sure that they're at a comfortable level. They've been there for a while, and then we give them a shot on it when they're excited. And then the other aspect is outside of the factory when a lot of what we do is we go to shows where we let's say it's at a hospital or a convention center where we go to a show where I'll set up 4, 5, 6, 7 tables and have all of our product laid on a table. And they learn to interact with customers.
Mm.
They learn to make change. They learn to use the point of sale system. And they get to the point where I kind of just stand back and completely let them handle the whole table. So it's kind of like a career ladder that we built where these individuals little by little get more experience and exposure to other aspects of the company. And then usually when a time they get kind of to that top tier, we start having conversations along the way, really, of what do they want to do? What are their interests? Some like music, some want a career in other aspects. They want to go to college or a technical school.
We had an individual one time that his dream was to work in a warehouse.
Mhm,
He
yep.
wanted to learn how to use a pallet jack
And forklift.
and a
Yep.
forklift. And we only have a small pallet jack, but we let him learn to use pallet jack
Mhm.
and understanding inventory and understanding to know where products are placed in our factory
That's right.
at a small scale, which helped him
Yeah.
for the larger scale. And now he's working in a larger warehouse running pallet jacks and things like that. So
I mean, that's such an important thing because what you guys are doing is literally giving them a learning experience for them to branch out to bigger and better. I mean, this is such an important aspect in what you're doing because we won't get that aspect anywhere else.
and to your point, Reed, I think one of the neat things that this allows is, at least when I look at how my son's being educated in the school system right now, the approach they've had to take his entire life from 2 on to where he is today was pictures, visual prompts, and verbal prompts.
Hmm.
And guess what? He learned to speak through PECS, which is the pictorial education system or communication system. And so, and it was those little cards with pictures. So what we do even at the factory is we have a wipe off board with goals, tasks, so they can read it and then we speak to it, and then we show them. So it is really showing. It's that verbal, it's the physical cues, and again, it's the best way to learn that we found from an approach, because it's full circle.
And we recently started making training videos too, so that they can see in action like a process from the first step to the last step. So they're able to
they all learn
see
differently.
it. Yeah, exactly.
We all learn differently.
Yeah, everyone learns differently, and a lot of companies don't realize that. And especially when you're autistic, they don't realize we think differently than everyone else. We see the bigger picture, and sure you see that with Jake and all your employees. We think outside of the box. We try to find new ways to do things where those who are neurotypical only see one way and they're like, okay, that's it. Where we go, oh no, there's got to be another way to solve this problem.
Right. Right. That's correct.
Now, is there a personal story or experience that helped you shape your mission and to support those who are neurotypical?
A personal story is Jake for us. I mean, he's the reason it all began, and while he's not a full-time contributor yet to the company, it has allowed us to really spread our wings. I think I alluded to it earlier. We're up to like 10 different high schools now every semester.
Good for you.
Thank you. They rotate through. They come in on a bus or a van with a teacher, their aide from the school, and they'll work in small groups. At the beginning of the semester, it's very chaotic, because for some of these individuals, they're brand new, so they're not sure what to expect. But by usually halfway through the semester, they come in, they go right to the aprons, they put on their hairnet, they go wash their hands, and they're all standing there just waiting and excited for direction. Like this is the highlight of their day, and from the time they start to wait is when we then try to employ as many individuals as we can that really want to be a part of it.
Through different state programs.
Different state programs. We do a lot with OVR. We do a lot with WEXI, which is another organization, funded program for adults. And we also have adult volunteers too, individuals that are in their 40s and 50s who's never worked, but they come in for an hour or two, and their skills are extremely limited, but it gets them out to do something. So while while they're not necessarily employed, those individuals, they're so happy to come for that hour or two with their job coach, and then they go back to their home that they're in. So it's kind of a combination of that, starting with Jake and now working our way through these different programs.
And I think it's interesting because, we'll say Jake, obviously Jake was the main catalyst and why we wanted to do this. But I remember when I met Roger 20 years ago, he had made mention of he would love to do some sort of job with special needs individuals. It's always had a place in his heart. And then as I got to know him, I learned and I met the people that had the place in his heart. In high school, he worked with a young man who was his school peer, and Roger just took him in. I mean, you can talk about Mike.
Yeah, Mike. I played football and hockey, and he unfortunately wasn't able to play for the team. But he was participating as like the equipment manager on the team, and
he was in every meeting, every team meeting.
Yeah. So it just always had a special place, whether it's Special Olympics through the years, or Autism Speaks, which we have done a lot on a national level, and then we do a lot of local autism community groups as well. And it's just and then really, well, it started off as Spectrum Fudge because of the autism spectrum, because of Jake. I really wanted to be an inclusive employer. And at times I felt very exclusive, because I would have individuals that would contact me for a job, and maybe they had Down syndrome, or they had cerebral palsy, or they were at the school of the blind or the school of the deaf. And I felt so bad turning these individuals away, and they were also in the same boat. So I kind of rebranded. We rebranded about a year and a half ago, and we kind of call it the Spectrum of Abilities. And at Spectrum Fudge, all are welcome. So we actually do have those partnerships with the School of the Blind, the School of the Deaf, the Children's Institute of Pittsburgh, those as well as public high schools that come in.
Now, how do you create an environment support to support those with sensory needs, communication differences, emotional safety in the workplace? I mean, because as you know, those who are autistic have different needs and different issues. How do you work with them to compromise so not everyone's affected?
I think it's individualizing. Everything is individualized. Um, we have individuals that we have a visually impaired individual that works with us on shows, and
Hmm.
we've worked to um, create. He can see bright colors and thick writing, so something like you can make out bright colors with thick writing. So what we've used is um, bright yellow post-it notes with very thick Sharpie to write the prices of the items. So, and then we've also looked at getting a magnifying glass to make the print of our iPads larger for him to be able to see. And those are something so simple, but to the fact of we have individuals also in the factory with dexterity issues, right?
Right. We stumble on that a lot. And like quickly, like I said, we learn what people's strengths are and what opportunities they have. And some do have dexterity issues in their hands where putting 3 Oreos in a bag, it would take them all day. And then by the time they get it in, because they have a glove on, the chocolate is melted and smeared because of the heat of their hand. So, we want to make sure we also maintain a high quality product as well.
Yeah.
So we have to constantly shift. Sometimes, but maybe they do very well with just taking that glove and grabbing a handful of gummy bears and putting it into a container on the scale. So then we would move them into that until they feel comfortable, and then we would look to something else.
We had a young man. Do you remember the young man who we had all the kids in one room? He came in with a group of children, our teens, and he was in the room and he was completely overstimulated because these individuals got loud and they started talking and they were having fun.
Hmm.
And then there was also other individuals in the group that were stimming in different ways and creating noises. So the young man's sensory was just, we're in a warehouse. We have high ceilings. So the echo and the things. So one of the things I was able to do was I walked over with his job coach and I said, "Hey, I see this young man struggling. And how do I see it? Because I noticed it as a mom, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, I see him struggling. Let's take him over and give him something to do on this side of the factory where nobody was." So you know what? We asked him to sweep and he loved it. And I could see him, he was still stimming some, but he was talking to himself and he was really into it and he was scripting but it was the ability to recognize it, separate it. So we didn't have to shush others. We didn't have to make it an uncomfortable environment for
Yeah.
everybody. We were able to, okay, let's take this equation. Let's move him over here. He was happy. They were still happy. Everything was working fine. So it's all very much individualized.
It is. And that's a good point. We do move people where we can. And when we see things like that, we did something recently where to move somebody in a chocolate room because she was overwhelmed with the noise. Several of the students and employees come in with headphones on because they know themselves that the noise can be a lot. We have a few employees that come in that are completely nonverbal. So they actually come in with their iPad, with their touch screen and communication. We work with them through that. And like the one individual from the school to blind, she can not see the bottom of the bag, which has like a seam on it. But if we take like a little black Sharpie marker and mark on them all, she'll know that's the bottom. And then she can plug them in. And then when we go seal it, that little black piece gets thrown away because it's cut off. So we try to know what we have. And I got to say, too, because at the end of the day, I guess we're trained. We're trained amateurs, not trained professionals because we have a son, but we're not.
Amateurs, I like that.
We're not job coaches. We're not therapists, right? We didn't go to school for this. But so a lot of what we do is we really depend on the expertise of those that come in, whether it's a school teacher, those their student. This one individual has behavioral issues, and she would come in, and as soon as one thing set her off, she'd start screaming. Profanity would be used. She would go over to the break room. She actually flipped a table, threw some stuff. And the teacher came up to me and said, I cannot, if you want, I won't bring her anymore. And I says, no, no, no. If she can't work here, she ain't gonna be able to work anywhere. I don't want her to hurt herself or others, but if we can put her in an area where she is comfortable and it's quiet, and now she can make it through a whole shift without any outburst. If she feels like she's having about ready to explode, she has a relationship with her teacher now that they walk out on the front porch for a minute and she regains, takes a little bit of a break. And that's the other thing too. When individuals start a 1 hour shift, a lot of times can be extremely long. So we have breaks and they build up their stamina. You know, it takes a while before they can do 2, 3, or 4 hour days. And sometimes at the end, some can never do more than 4. I should say never, but in a period of time, others can make it to an 8 hour day. So we just try to individualize it, as Erin said, as much as we can.
Now, how do you face the challenges that you have, either in the business or building an inclusive team, and how do you overcome them?
Um, well, I think the challenges that we have are learning the new groups that come in, and how they'll interact and blend with the current staff that's there. So we start to know that on a Monday, we school coming in, Tuesday school, and we have our core employees that may work every day or several days a week. Well, we might know which school has other issues, or individuals that need extra attention. So we tried to make sure, like, if we have one individual that, like Erin was referencing, that was stymieing real bad that day, because that group on a Wednesday is rather a loud group, that maybe we don't schedule him on a Wednesday. We'll try to schedule him on a Tuesday or Thursday. So I think learning your core team who comes in and accommodate their individual needs as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Able to work anytime, any shift. And for some, they'll get through that barrier. For
Now, do you practice affirming stuff like making sure you're using the right terminology and the positive terminology, and do you reinforce that with your kids so they know to use positive instead of negative terms?
I think so. I mean, I think some of the things like there's when it comes to language in general, we try really hard to be very positive and be very affirming in what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not, hey, yeah, you can't do this right. We're going to move you somewhere else. It's, hey, are you enjoying this? You want to try something different? Like, it really is affirming, reaffirming that they have talent to do anything, and they can participate and contribute into this process in the way that works best for them. So I think in that manner, we do that very well. I will also say that we work really hard not to speak in acronyms and not to speak in puns or different language, like, all right, we got to all stay on the ball, or, you know, different things like that, because they could say, there's no ball. What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. You know, or you guys make a great team. Yeah, but I don't play a sport. So there, you know, I think we're trying to work really hard to speak in that more very literal language.
Like the gold medalist fudge.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we were creating a packaged fudge deal, and I was marketing it as gold medalist fudge. And one of our employees said to Roger, we want a gold medal for this. We need to say that. Where's our gold medal? We're like, no. We're just calling it. So yeah. So I mean, there's situations we have to make sure that we're very clear. And I would say, from a personal standpoint, our use of language and planning at the school, or I mean at the factory, has really helped in our communicating with our neurotypical child and our neurodivergent child. And I think I would say you have become incredibly patient, more than you used to be.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Before we didn't use all that affirming language, because it was just, we're getting through life. But I think just in general, the neuro affirming language, I think, has been phenomenal.
It is phenomenal because you don't realize that there are those who are on the spectrum who don't understand slang, like you said, like let's play it by ear. Let's be a team. And they're like, what do you mean play it by ear?
Mhm.
I remember I was at a podcast conference and I was talking with a guy who had a son who's autistic and he's like, we're gonna go outside, we're gonna go, but we're gonna play it by ear. And the son was like, what do you mean play it by ear? And then he was telling me
Mhm.
how him and his girlfriend had to explain to him what play it by ear meant, that they were gonna take it as it goes
Right.
and see how
Mhm.
things happen. People don't realize our minds process things so differently and we are so distinct in what we think and how we feel that
Yep.
different terminologies and different phrases mean something different when we hear it.
Right.
And Reed, to that point too, we've also had to coach our coaches that come in or in ourselves and our partner that has our business partner, that these individuals may not look at you when you are giving them direction,
Oh
but it
yeah,
doesn't mean they're not listening.
no.
We've seen that firsthand with
Oh
Jake,
yeah. Mhm.
that we could be talking about something, and then as we get to go, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, we're going to da 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 da," and he'll say exactly what we said. We weren't speaking to him.
Yeah,
They
but he
hear,
heard everything.
you hear what's going on, and and quite frankly, those individuals that don't make eye contact with you, it's because they are working so hard to be able to hear what you're
Mhm.
saying and process it. Using one more motor skill and planning of the eye contact is going to make them unable to hear everything you want to
And
hear
retain it.
and retain it. So that's been something we've also had to
Mhm.
make sure that we do is accept those that look off to the side as you're
Right.
talking to them, because you realize that's the way they're going to retain your messaging.
I mean, that brings up a great story. I had a guest who was um lecturing about dating and stuff to the autistic community at the JCC where he was, and all the kids had their eyes down, and he didn't real, and he finished, and he goes to the woman that set it up, and she's like, how did it go? And she's like, they weren't listening. They all were looking down. She's like, wrong. They were hearing every word you said, and you did great. And people don't realize that, like you said, when we don't look at you, it doesn't mean we're not listening.
Right.
Oh, lost them. All right.
Sorry about
Where did
that.
I leave off?
No, you were saying that
The
your friend from the
conference.
JCC that was
Yeah.
speaking to the children, the kids were
Yeah.
looking down.
The children were looking down and they weren't, he was worried they weren't listening to him. He finishes up and he goes to the woman that set it up and he's like, how did it go? She's like, they weren't listening to me at all. She's like, you're wrong. They heard every word you said and
Yep.
they appreciated everything. And you're right. We hear everything you tell us. It doesn't mean we're not listening. It means we are trying to use less stimulation and processing information so our minds can grab it. That's why we get overloaded because you throw us into a situation where we get so much going on. One less sensory processing thing will make things work.
Right.
100%.
That's
That
correct.
was a
Yep.
great story.
Now, what kind of feedback have you received from your employees and their families?
Oh my gosh.
Right. That's the best part.
I mean, that's the best part. I would
Yeah.
say um, parents that they they cry
Mhm.
to us of they never expected to see their kids get a paycheck,
Yeah.
or obtain these skills. I mean, on our social media posts, we posted one about one of our girls that got her first paycheck, and she was so proud. And her parents still say to this day that that was just such a great moment for them as well as her, and the fact that there's a company out there that wants to encourage our individuals to be able to work and work in a safe place is because as a parent, you have been given this gift of this child, and in every IEP meeting, doctor's appointment, your armor is on and you're ready to fight and you're ready to make sure that your kid gets every possible thing they can. So then to be able to send them to a factory in a workplace where you're not going to be, and you're fearful and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm letting this kid out of my sight and I haven't been able to, like, I don't know what they're going to encounter, but know that you're going to leave them safe with somebody that has the same passion you do as a parent.
Mhm.
Speaks volumes. I mean, and you talk to a lot of parents.
Absolutely. And I think the saddest part for me is that when a parent their kid finishes the program, let's say they were a student and they're looking for a part-time job and they want a job with us and we just don't have room to be able to hire them at this point. It's funny as I talk to friends and family who I know that's in like the hospitality business, and their biggest challenge is staffing. They can never find enough employees, enough workers. I have the complete opposite problem is that, and it's sad because as we said at the very beginning, there should be more opportunities out there for these individuals that other companies are given a chance. And when I can't bring somebody else on, that's the toughest thing for me. It hurts because I see the parents, I feel their parents, I feel what they've just went through. I see the progress and the excitement that their child had, and they want to continue. And maybe it's a volunteer opportunity only because we're still a small growing business that has to manage the finances too. That's the toughest part. But the stories are endless. And also when we go to like shows and we see, when we start to explain to a customer what we do and who we are, you can see at least once or twice every single show, you get that look on the parents' or face where they're like, my kid has this, or my nephew, or my grandson, or granddaughter,
and all they want to do is share their story.
Yes, all they want to do is share their story and then learn more about you. Even if they're out of state and they can't work with you, they want to hear about it.
Reed, I've had so many people, so many parents that moms are just crying, and I'm like, can I hug you? And because it's it's so nice when you find your community.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm sure your mom can attest to this. Like, it's a hard journey, but it's a worthy one. It's a valuable one. It's a rewarding one, but it's hard.
Yes, I mean, to give you a little background on myself, we never knew I was autistic until my late 20s. We only knew I had ADHD, and we had a family member who was a psychologist, one who was a psychiatrist, one who was a family lawyer, and even my own PCP all saw the traits, and they turned to my parents and go, Reed's got high functioning autism, and it's just like this light bulb all of a sudden went off above their heads, and it's like this explains so much of why he does what he does. I mean, I used to remember stories of my parents telling me, you used to take apart your father's tools just to see how they worked. And I'd be like, I don't remember any of this. And it's like, you're right. It takes a village to find a village.
Hey, Reed, sorry about that.
Not a problem.
I know what I know. I heard you say you take apart your father's.
Yeah, I used to take apart my father's tools, and my mom would say that explains so much of why he does what he does. It's because he's autistic. And then it wasn't until my late 50s I got the official diagnosis through a clinical trial for autism for a drug that helped with communications. And then it's kind of like this light bulb in my mom's head, like, oh my God, this explains why he only sees right and wrong. He doesn't see that gray area. I mean, there are so many times where I can tell you my father or my mother or somebody in my family was telling a story, and I'd interrupt them and say, "You're wrong. You got the story wrong." And my parents would pull me aside later and go, "You don't interrupt during this when I'm telling the story." In my mind, I'm like, "Why? You're telling it wrong."
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
No, and it's so true though. It's I commend you because you're doing an amazing job. And it's so nice that you are a voice out there in this community.
I mean, one of the reasons I do this podcast is, I mean, I started off with a blog and I realized it just wasn't getting that sincerity out there. My voice wasn't being heard. And then I wanted people to realize you're not alone in this world. There are people out there willing to help you. There are others like you out there going through the same thing you're going through.
Right.
Oh my gosh, so
That's
true.
right.
And one of the things you're doing for Jake is one of the things I wrote a book about. And it's you're letting him step out of his comfort zone to explore the world. And people don't realize how important that is, especially when you're autistic.
Yeah.
It's true.
It is so important. And important. It's important to be okay if they fail too. And we have to, I want to helicopter him and provide this barrier around him at all times. And but I also need to let him fail.
And I think that's one thing that our business partner lends a balance to Aaron and I. He and his wife do not have children, but he is an amazing chef, and was just happened to be not working at the time. So a very long story short, he came to our factory and fell in love with what we do
And the kids
and just everything he does now centers around the kids, and he has this a level of they have excitement, and he gets to know the kids, and he knows that when one kid comes in, all he wants to do is talk about a sports team, and another one wants to talk about music, and he lets them rotate their music onto the Bluetooth speaker so that people can listen to music. He creates a fun environment, but he argues with me when he says, I don't think these individuals not all of them, but some of them don't need as much attention and help as you think. And I feel like my job is to push them to be all they can be.
And he does it great.
He does. And it's such a balance, right? You want to put
No problem. You were just saying you
want to push hard enough that they can achieve their
losing you again. There we go. You want to push and you want to push.
You want to push and you want them to achieve their true balance, their true passion and their goals, but yet you don't want to push too hard that makes them shut down.
I know. I mean,
Yeah,
people don't
so that's the
realize.
tough part.
I know, because you gotta find your balance of how much do I want to push these kids to how much to the point I don't want them to have a breakdown again. I mean, when you push someone too far, you don't want them to have a meltdown, especially because
Exactly.
you don't want to deal with that because you know what sensory overload is. And it's that
Exactly.
balance. How do you figure out the balance?
Yep. And everybody has a different level. And I
Yeah.
think it goes back to the individualized that we talked about before. And and you have to know that. And you have to make sure that they feel comfortable with you in order for you to allow them to push. So it should not it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, people don't realize, like you said, every one of us has our own limits. And it's knowing where to go and how much to push. I mean, there are parents out there who don't know their own child's autistic limits. And I've talked with countless people about you don't want to push your child who doesn't want to eat something because that's the way you were raised. No, because what's going to happen is that child's going to wind up with eating problems.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Now, if another small business owner wanted to create a neurodivergent inclusive working place, what advice would you give them?
I would say don't give up. I think the biggest thing that you could say is, first of all, there are resources out there, and
Right.
I assure you that if you were to Google or research, that individual would find other businesses in that area trying to do similar things. I would think that's the greatest
Yeah.
part of what you do every day, is he is constantly networking, and he's created an amazing circle of other businesses in the Pittsburgh
Yeah.
area that are trying to accomplish similar things because of their children or their niece or their nephew or other motivation. And I think that's the big thing is use your network. Get out there, hit the pavement, so to speak. I'm speaking in analogies, right? But get out there and talk to people, make the meetings, and learn what resources you can also bring in to the like figure out your craft. You know your craft, and you know the type of business you want to create, but then it's learn from others on process. We have a lady that owns a ice cream shop, and she ice cream and cookie shop, and she's amazing. And she said to Roger, I love what you're doing. I want to do that too. She started the business for her daughter, but now she's like, I want to bring in other people, and I want to employ others, not just my daughter. And again, so it's like we're learning, they're learning, and we're all pulling on each other as resources to create, because it's not going to be just our business that makes a difference in the population of the autism community and the special needs community. It's going to be our business and their business and her business and his business. And because we can employ everybody. We want to, but we can't. So really it's create your network.
The work you do outside of your business is equal to, if not more important, than actually the work that happens inside your business.
Yeah.
And I think those networks and those connections that you make with everything from, neurodiverse organizations to the local schools, to the government agencies, to the local Congress, men and women. We've already had one, and now we're having a second open house in our factory where we invite the state and federal representatives, all that can make it from both parties,
And local, yeah.
to our facility, and we say, hey, this is who we are, and they see these kids in action, and we say, this is what we're trying to accomplish, but we need your help. We need the word out there. We need to make sure that the funding keeps coming in for OVR and for those other support services. So those are the type of things that I would encourage another business that's looking to start, to make sure that they get that out there, because that's the key.
And finally, where can people find out more about your fudge and support your mission and follow your story?
Right to our website at spectrumfudge.com. And we're on all the socials.
Yep. We're on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. So happy to connect them in all social medias as well.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles, and that was Roger and Erin Haney, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, guys.
Thank
you so
you.
much.
And I